How do you know if you're a spiritual person? Are you psychic or are you going go-go? So, a lot of times when we're going through a spiritual awakening or when we decide to take on a more spiritual lifestyle, we are behaving outside of the construct of what society would deem as being proper behavior or conventional or traditional behavior, which then automatically classifies us on the other perspective. And these other perspectives of classifications oftentimes is having mental health or psychological or psychiatric issues. So what differentiates spiritual people from people who may have psychiatric or mental health issues now becomes a common concern. And there is a difference, but it takes some details for me to get through before actually really addressing the topic. So first, we want to kind of understand, like, all right, what makes a spiritual being? Like, what makes a person psychic? So pretty much a spiritual or psychic person is somebody who is more connected to the other world. So they're more connected to the imagination realm, whether it be the imagination of themselves or the imagination of others or a combination of both. They are people who have ESP, extrasensory perception, or you could just say they have like a sixth sense. So with that being said, they're generally just using that extra sense that more mundane traditional people may not use because they don't have to, because they're not living that type of lifestyle. So when you're so connected to the other realm, you can get lost within that realm. And that's kind of what differentiates, spiritual people from people that are more so on a spectrum of having a mental health concern. Now, here's the main thing. So we will be going over AstroPsychology in this particular video because I'm going to get into psychotic disorders. Probably just the first cluster. I don't, probably cluster A or something like that. But and you'll understand what I'm talking about if you don't understand what I'm talking about right now as it relates to that cluster A that I just mentioned. So besides that, what I'm trying to say is that, generally speaking, we're able to either live a mundane life and we jump into the extra senses, the extra perceptions, you know what I'm saying, for various reasons, like just to be empathetic, perhaps, and just to use our skill of imagination. Who the hell is ringing the doorbell right now at this time? It's flipping. I didn't order no pizza. I don't know who's ringing it. I'm not answering that. I don't know who's doing that. Let me look at my transits. So anyway, generally speaking, if we are partaking in a particular lifestyle in which we have to use our empathetic skills to understand our environment a little better. A lot of times salesmen do this, whether it be men or women. Doctors have to do this. Like, there's various professions. I'm not going to go over all of them, but we have to use these skills just to be able to connect with others, socially speaking, without necessarily having to direct it. You could just be able to connect and allow things to flow, right? So with that being said, there's other people who are just very spiritually inclined, in which they participate most of their life within the realm of using those skills, psychic skills, telepathic skills, extrasensory perception skills. Then you have people who live in that realm and they got completely lost in that realm and they have difficulty getting back to reality. So it's almost as if the imagination has completely distorted their ability to maintain a healthy lifestyle, socially speaking, practically speaking, just realistically speaking in general. So I like to use an example of an island, right? You have an island, so there's a piece of land, and then there's this ocean that's outside of the land. Spiritual people, for the most part, have the ability to escape the land, go and venture out into the waters, but they have a boundary that's set, and they know when to, they know when to sort of come back. They know when the boundary is about to be crossed, and they don't want to do that, so they want to turn back around. So there's a good connection still to the earth element for the most part. So there's a good connection to reality. There's a good connection to having structure in one's life. There's a good connection with the need to feel comfortable and safe. So they're going to venture off and get some information from, the surrounding body of water, but they have that boundary to come back onto the land of the island. But then there's other people who go out and they venture outside into the waters, right? And then they sort of never come back, or it's like they don't come back at the right time. They cross too many boundaries, and then it becomes difficult for them to kind of come all the way back. Okay, they may go onto a different land or something. They thought that was the island that they started at or something, is the best metaphor I can kind of give. So that would be your difference between a spiritual person, which is the first example I gave, versus a person who is starting to delve into mental illness or a psychotic problem. So with that being said, what is these psychotic problems I'm talking about? This is what people generally associate with going crazy. So having psychosis. So, keep in mind that everybody has these symptoms here or there. If you're going through a stressful time in your life, if you've partaken in drinking habits, or if you've taken drugs, or if you've just, done anything that caused your mind to get manipulated in some way, then keep in mind that you may experience these symptoms, but it doesn't mean that you're psychotic or anything like that. It just means like you had an episode, or like you could say almost like a nervous breakdown perhaps. But in general, a psychotic episode is a temporary, complete escape from reality. So in other words, it's a point in time in your life where you have completely lost contact, lost touch with your real life circumstances. A lot of times this occurs because, as I was saying in my previous AstroPsychology videos, that when someone has an inability to deal with their own personal issues, and they kind of keep escaping it, and it keeps building up, and they keep escaping it, and it keeps building up, what happens is the person starts to feel like they cannot handle it anymore. And generally speaking, what will happen is the person will completely escape their realistic life. Now, we all escape life. If you watch TV, that's a form of escapism. Reading a book is a form of escapism. Even like listening to a video, we all do it. It's necessary. It's good to kind of like entertain ourselves through escapism, to kind of like forget about what's going on and kind of enjoy ourselves in some kind of way, or take our mind off of things. Some people escape their problems by entertaining other people's problems, right? Some people escape their problems by just going on the internet. Social media is a great way to escape these days. So we just have to be choosy on what we want to escape. One is not better than the other. It really doesn't matter. People just have their own personal preferences, and that's it. But when you start to actually think that you're taking on the identity of your escapism, then that's when there's a problem, and that's when you're gearing more towards having a mental problem. Because what I'm trying to say is, you're watching a movie, okay, you're watching a show, and suddenly you think that you're a character in the show, like you actually really believe that, or you think that you have a deep connection, a personal connection with a character in the show or a character in a book. You gotta think about why that's happening and kind of try to deal with whatever you're going through, because there's limits to escapism. There's nothing wrong to escape, to temporarily, drift into that realm, but it's important to get back to self. And a lot of times when people go through things like psychotic episodes and mania, it's because they've now tapped out of their own sense of consciousness and have taken on the identity of an external force they were utilizing for escapism. And that's the reason why a lot of people with schizophrenia, which one of the beginning signs of schizophrenia is psychosis, or having psychotic episodes. When you start to have these psychotic episodes on an often basis, you're now jumping into the category of schizophrenia. Now there's different types of schizophrenia. There's like schizotypal. There's a bunch of different schizo types of. So there's subtypes is what it's called. Yeah, there's schizoaffective disorder, and it says that it's much like schizophrenia, but the patient also suffers from major mood episodes. So they're also experiencing major depressive episodes as well. So that's the difference. I guess schizophrenia doesn't really come with that, and then schizophreniform is very similar to schizophrenia as well. The only difference is the patient has experienced symptoms for longer than 1 week but less than 6 months. So the difference there is the timing, the time frame of the symptoms. Then there's schizotypal, and that one is developed in early adulthood, and it's characterized by pervasive deficits in social and interpersonal skills, eccentric behavior, discomfort with cognitive and perceptual distortions. This is where you start to believe weird things. Like, you may believe that news writers are sending you coded messages in their articles, so you collect and attempt to decode some newspapers again each day. Ideas of reference do not lead to altered behavior. You may believe that occurrences are not mere coincidence. So schizotypal is kind of like, you're not necessarily having like hallucinations or necessarily like delusions. Like, there's delusions, but it doesn't seem to really affect your everyday life. It's more so, it seems to be more so where a person just has like these strange beliefs that there's like external controls. So they may do like stupid stuff at work, but it may be very hush hush. Like, you may not know that they're doing that, perhaps, is what I'm seeing when I'm reading this. Schizotypal disorder may have these unlike delusions of reference in which a person is altered. For instance, you may believe. Yeah, so it's almost like it causes almost like a OCD because of your strange beliefs. That's what it looks like. So those are just subtypes of schizophrenia. And basically, also schizophrenia, it means split mind. So, it's when the mind is splitting out into the other world way too much, to the point that it's hard for the person now to grasp regular everyday reality. Now, I believe that this topic is very important because I feel like, everything starts on a very spiritual level, on a very innocent, peaceful level. And because we are not taught this information early on, and we're just categorized, and these categories have such a negative stigma on it that it causes people to not really be able to be truthful with these experiences that they may be experiencing, and they don't get help. And it's sad, because if they felt more comfortable admitting that they may be experiencing certain symptoms, then they'd be able to go and get some sort of help. And therefore, this could prevent them from actually getting classified as having schizophrenia, aka meeting the symptoms for that particular disorder. Because a lot of times these people are very spiritual beings who didn't know that that's what it really was, or perhaps they took this spirituality too far, because now I'm seeing spiritual people too starting to have these same exact symptoms. So I can't even say, okay, if you get introduced to a spiritual lifestyle, then you won't have schizophrenia. But I'm saying that there's levels, like there's a way to balance these things out. Now, you shouldn't completely X out doctors, because at the end of the day, people that have gone on these medications have now lived a normal life. Like, they're now living a normal life a lot of times. Sometimes it takes a long time, I get it, but it's like, you gotta get help somewhere. You have to at least have somebody that you trust to at least watch over you if you're going through these type of problems. And stay your ass at home and just like use your imagination towards something else. Like YouTube videos may be good. Like, to be completely honest, a lot of times these problems, they grow because of the inability to connect and communicate freely. If you are frozen in your own headspace, if you're feeling things and it's difficult for you to express these emotions and feelings, if you're thinking things and you cannot really get the words out to express them, or you feel like people are not listening to you, so then you kind of shut down, you become closed out, then you know what I'm saying? What are you going to do? Like, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm being completely honest. I am very sane, okay, right now. I'm a very sane person. I've been sane pretty much my whole life. But I understand that I'm eccentric. And eccentric people have a higher risk for going cuckoo. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. So I make sure that I utilize my gift of being eccentric into my creative endeavors, and I make sure that I'm able to communicate these messages out. And this is why it's important for people to be able to do YouTube videos, or to be able to write, or to be able to sing, or to be able to rap, or to be able to perform poetry or spoken word. Because at the end of the day, you're allowing that person to melt the ice. You're allowing them to free themselves from a mental blockage that they've been having. And once that mental blockage grows far too much, and you know what I'm saying, and the person becomes completely stuck, that's when you're getting to that borderline of having a psychotic episode and getting schizophrenia, because you're unable to express yourself. You're stuck. So the thing is, we got to thank YouTube for allowing us to be able to freely express ourselves. And I'm not saying people with schizophrenia or people with bipolar or people with whatever. I'm just saying that it's great to have these outlets, and I'm appreciative of these social media outlets. I really do appreciate it, despite everything that's going on. In addition to that, I'm just appreciative of anyone who actually cares to listen, or to just vibe. And it's like a late Thanksgiving speech. But for real, these outlets allow us to express ourselves freely, so that we're not stuck into these mental blocks. We have so much freedom today. There's a lot of bullshit still going on, unfortunately, but we have a lot of freedom, and we ought to take advantage of these resources. Stop caring so much about what people think, and be you. Because it's very easy to fall in the trap of going cuckoo. And I'm telling you right now, most people that be going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, they have an inability to feel a sense of freedom. They lock everything up and they cannot be themselves. They cannot express themselves without caring so much about what someone else thinks. Now, I ain't saying go around curse everybody out and, you know, do crazy stuff. Everything is done with balance, but also, like, don't completely cage yourself into your true identity. Like, this is our life that we're living. We're our own person. We should be able to express ourselves freely. And I'm telling you, that's one of the biggest cures for things like, I wouldn't say cure necessarily, but it's the best way to prevent yourself from going crazy. People go crazy because they're too quiet, they're inactive, and when you stay in a state for so long, your body, it locks up that way. If I constantly sit like this every single day and I don't really move that much, my bones, my muscles, and my nervous system is gonna adapt to me being so flipping confined physically. If I try to get up, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be like, I'm gonna be like, oh shit, I ain't moving. You know, think of that same way with your emotions and your feelings and your thoughts and all that stuff. It works the same way. So, I think that's all I really want to say about this topic in general. I hope it was helpful, and thank you for watching. Blessings, light, and love to everyone.